is so much better quality on here.
Yes, yes. All right, hello. And I would like to introduce Karl Neville, my cousin, who has been documenting the legacy of his ancestors over the last 10 centuries. I thought it important to have a conversation with him as he serves as a role model regarding his own legacy. Welcome, Mr. Neville.
Carl's fine, Angelina, and yes, it's lovely to be here with you, to be fair. Across the pond, as they say.
Yes, yes. So can you give us a little bit of history about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was raised in a mixture, really. I've lived in a few countries over the years myself, but I was actually raised in Islington in London, which is quite ironic because it's not that far from Raby Castle, which I'll talk about later on if you wish. So it's almost like going back to your roots without realising. So in Islington, London, and then for some weird oddity, we decided to, my father and mother, they decided to go into the depths of Suffolk. In England, and so we ended up in Bury St Edmunds area, and Bury St Edmunds again is quite an interesting place with all its history and what have you, the abbey and everything else. So yeah, sort of a mixture. It's almost like city toddler meets country young man boy, really. So leaving London with all the hustle and bustle and understanding all this sirens and things, and then all of a sudden you're in this green vast area, which is the typical England, and you think, oh my god, it takes a little bit of adjustment to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I've got, but yeah, it works well. It's a happy mix between the two, really. I've got one brother. He's older than I by 4 years, and yeah, funny enough, he's gone back to London. So and his wife, my sister-in-law, she's a specialist nurse, one of these super matrons they call her, so Samantha. So yeah, they're back in London quite happily. Myself, I'm a bit of a country boy these days, to be fair. I've got to be honest. I live in a lovely village in just north of Cambridge itself. Everyone knows Cambridge, but it's lovely. So I'm near enough to go into the city and access that if I want to, but I'm far enough into the wilderness, as it were, to enjoy the fruits of its labor, to enjoy the countryside. And I have foxes coming through my garden at night time. I have birds, and I have every animal possible. You get the odd rat, I'll be honest with you.
Yes.
And they look the size of cats, my god, when you see them in the countryside. But they don't like, they're more scared of you than you are of them. So yeah, the countryside in England is very quaint. It's lovely. I think it'd be hard to give it up, really, to be honest. But yeah, as I say, I've got one brother. His name's Craig, and he's over in London, or down in London, as it were, geographically speaking. And my mother and father. My father sadly died 3 years ago, quite unexpectedly. That was a bit of a hoo-ha, Henry. But my mother's still alive at the moment, which is good. And she lives well, and she's got all her faculties, which I think is really important, to carry on. That you understand what you're doing, aware of your surroundings and things. So yeah, she's doing very well, thank God. Touch wood, as they say here. And then yeah, I guess from there, as a toddler, I probably spent a lot of time with my great grandfather, which is quite weird for most people, I guess, in a modern world. And my great grandfather, he was an amazing chap. His name was Henry Clarke, actually. So that's Clarke with an E, which has quite a bit of an Irish link to it, obviously, as well, with the Clarke surname. And he spawned out of Honiton in Devon before going back into Ireland, into Ayr. So there's a lot of Irish connection there, really, I guess. But I think he really did shape the way that I am today. And I think we always think about that, that it's those early years in our existence on the earth that we absorb everything like a sponge, and then that does shape us moving forward. So I think it's so important, I don't know, all the different types of visual stimuli that we have in those earlier days, that we were able to connect, and we recognize that, and it helps us to develop. And he certainly did that for me. I mean, from what I remember of him, he was a very interesting man. He also had some very, very academic, but he was also very family orientated. He was very family values, although he was academic and very, very involved in some very interesting things that I probably can't say on on here. And I know you understand that, being from an ex-military background with your father and things, Angelina, as we just spoke about. So yeah, I can't really mention that on here. But he'd have his own allotment, and he would make sure that he grew vegetables for everybody, for all the family members, to make sure that they had fresh vegetables. So on one hand, he's doing a relatively high profile role in life, and on the other hand, he's making sure he's feeding the family. Now that's amazing. That's an amazing contrast that I think somehow in modern world we've lost the sight of that, really. It's so easy, isn't it, for all of us, and I included, to go down and think, well, hey, you know, I just want to get some runner beans, pop to Tesco's, pop to wherever you want to go, you know,
Right.
or yeah, rather than do it yourself. So yeah, I think from that point, it allowed me to recognise the importance of family value, and most importantly, the importance of other people and who
Yes.
you interact with.
Sure. There's the joke with children these days. Where does the food come from? It comes from grocery stores.
Yes, of course.
Right. And forgetting the farm aspect. Yes. Yes. What would you
Yeah,
say it would be maybe the top 3 values when you were growing up that you were raised with? The top 3 values.
honesty, most importantly, to be truthful. I think that was really, really important there. I think respect, and again, I think we've lost that, and it was mainly respect for elders. And I'm sure that's across the globe like that. You know, I wouldn't dream of saying anything against someone that was, myself as a child, a young man, I wouldn't dream of saying something to an elderly person that would be either A, offensive, or B, disrespectful. So I think there's the respect for others. That's honesty and respect are the first 2 key points. And again, we've lost that these days because, you know, the world's changed, not necessarily always in the right way. But then I guess you could argue it's down to us to change it back again.
Right.
You know,
to
yeah,
be the change. Right.
that's
Right.
right. Yeah, to make the change, to be dynamic enough to move backwards as well as forwards. I guess
Yes. Yes.
dynamism is a wonderful thing in psychology, anyway. And then you've got the third thing, really, I guess, would be, so you've got the honesty, you've got the respect, and I think, I hate to use the word love, but I think love, and I don't mean love as in the lovey-dovey hugging relationship one. I think the love of things that are around you, and the love for nature, and the love for the environment to which you're in. And that, as we mentioned pre-recording, that could be the love of the city and the vibrancy of the moving lights and everything, the glitz and the glamour, to the love of the beautiful open fresh air countryside where you can hear the owl flying at night time, you know, all those wonderful things that you can.
Sure. A mix
Yeah.
of I would call it an appreciation as well as being a good steward.
Yes, absolutely. I think, yeah,
Yes.
and that's absolutely correct in my mind as well, you know.
Yes.
So
Okay.
it's that working in hard, I think it's all about balance, you know, as we all know. It's about working in harmony, so being harmonious in our own environment. So if we get that balance, then we feel balanced. But if we feel rushed and harassed in an environment, then yes, of course, we're going to be, you know, the whole environment's going to be rushed and harassed. Have you been to
Okay.
London lately? Oh my God.
Much
Yeah,
hustle and
it's
bustle.
busy.
Yes.
It's busy. God, yeah.
Yes.
Well, not so much at the moment because of COVID, but generally it's busy. Yeah.
What would you like others to know about your life?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think really that I try, like I just mentioned, those key points. Really, that I try and live honestly and respectful with life, and I try and attune to nature without sounding too tree huggy. You know, I'm not a tree hugger, guys, that's for sure. But I try and respect the life and environment around me. I like to think I'm always helpful with people as much as I can be. And yes, like we all have, sometimes it's to your own detriment. And then you learn from that, I think, and you move forward from that, rather than treat it as a negative. We look at it as a positive, you know, the half full rather than half empty
Okay.
glass scenario, which I think is always a useful one to use. So I think from there, I have a passion for family heritage, as you know.
Yes. Yes. I've seen the family tree.
Yeah, I love the importance of that. And it would have mattered not had my family tree be that they were farm workers on a field in the back of Beyond in County Durham. It just so happens that the ancestry line goes back to being all the lords and the sirs and the dames and the ladies and the earls. And then we go back into Ireland to be the high kings of Ireland. So it's quite amazing. It's an amazing revelation for anyone to look back and see that. So heritage is really important to me. If I'm talking too much, do let me know.
No, this is great. So it sounds like to me that optimism, you would like others to remember your optimistic outlook.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a valid point to have.
Okay.
I mean, as you know, I've had my own health issues and things, but you as my great grandma used to say, you pick yourself up, you brush yourself down, and you move ever forward.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
you know. So yeah, and she was very stern. I'll give her that. She was very stern. But what a woman! What a woman!
Well, it's good to be
So,
tough.
yeah.
Yes, to brush yourselves off and not to fall into self-pity, but to, pull herself up by her bootstraps and march forward. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, of course. Obviously, I love writing. Obviously, not some people you wouldn't necessarily know, but I love writing. I've been writing since, and it's a very English phrase, since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, as they say. Yeah. And in my latest book, can I just give a little flash of
Yes,
that as well?
please.
Yeah, I don't know how to use the little thing at the bottom, but there we are. That's it. It's available in America, guys. The Genesis Code. It's full of really controversial stuff. I am a controversial writer, have been for many years. This is my 18th book. I'm currently writing my 19th book, which I really hope to get out by January, February time. Been a bit delayed because of the heart attack and various other things, but it's back on track again. The new book is called Finding Camelot, and that almost like gives you the thoughts of Arthurian legends and that sort of thing, and the tales of Maid Marian, all that, but or whatever, all those sort of knightly virtues. It does have some of that in there, but it's much more than that. So it's got a bit of a twist to it. So what I write, they're not novels, they're not stories, they're more about various, sometimes on an academic level, sometimes on a pure research module level, but they're cram-packed full of all sorts of interesting things. Now, this was meant to be my final book, Finding Camelot, but God willing, if I make another couple of years, which I hope to, then I've already got all the plan ready for the next final book, which we called Under the Dome. So that'll be quite interesting. So there we are. So I mean, for me, I think you're right what you said. I try and keep a positive outlook on life, keep optimistic, and I try and take people as face value, and I try and see past their masks that they wear. Because we all have so many masks for different occasions, and you think, well, okay, let's strip those masks away and let's see that person for who they really are.
So here's a question. So for a sneak peek of your book, The Genesis Code, what might you, just if you were to touch upon a few key points, what might you say is controversial in the content? And I think this would be the juicy part that somebody on the outside, in terms of breaking the ice, what might they connect with or be provoked by?
They could be provoked by some of the writings in there that go against the Vatican teachings in modern time. There's aspects in there of Enochian tradition, and the book of Enoch, obviously. There's aspects in there that promote Catholicism, but at the same time condemns it for it being changed beyond belief, beyond the original books in the good book, as it were. So there's a lot of things in there. There's so much in there. There's things in there about blessing your own home as well, about how you can do that yourself, how you can make your own waters, and how you can most definitely really how you can empower yourself to be much more independent from religion. I think religion is really important. Obviously, most of my books are very religious, but they're also the idea is they're meant to be autonomous, that the reader is able to feel a level of autonomy to be able to do things for themselves.
That's wonderful. So a little bit of, I would say, spiritual development, but also being able to challenge and explore, not just taking and accepting information as is without being able to understand it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So on your YouTube channel, you've been on a number of quests. Would you like to explain what a quest is for somebody who might not know, And also,
Oh,
what do the quests mean to and for you?
yeah, they're amazing. All I can say is they're absolutely amazing. That's why I still do them, Angelina. Honestly, they're amazing. We treat them as a form of pilgrimage, if that's the right word to use or phrase to use. Pilgrimage, I think. It allows myself and others involved to actually live and walk through history. So we're living history. And there's things like I think I mentioned to you before, the Raby Castle. Being able to go and touch one of my great grandfather's original paintings in Raby Castle, where he lived. Oh, it just gives me goosebumps. Do you know what I mean? It's
Okay.
amazing.
It's a
Absolutely amazing.
connection point. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
You think, my God, this is where we come from, But it's also seeing all the other places to realize that you're not just following, say, 100 years ago. I'm looking at 1,000 years ago, then I'm looking at 1,200 years ago, and so on. So it's looking at the migrational pattern of a family line, which is absolutely fascinating. At the same time, it's almost as if you're cataloguing the churches that you go to. You're also making your own mark for history, I guess, because whatever happens in the world, one hopes that say 50 years from now, 100 years from now, that someone might be able to look at those videos and go, oh my God, there's things in there that are quite interesting, and go back and look at that.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
you are creating your own little archive, your own little time capsule, really, to be fair.
Okay.
That's what the quests are about.
Okay, that's wonderful. So it sounds like what they mean to you is being able to hold that connection with your history, as well as being able to pass it forward.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
I think that's important. That's important for anyone in any family line or any family member, isn't it? We all like to think as individuals that we matter and we mean something in the world, and that there is something that's going to be valuable that someone's going to say in those 50 years. My God, did you know your great grandfather did this?
Right.
Really? So yeah,
yes.
I think we all like to hold those individualized thoughts, really.
And before we started to record, we had a quick chat about the value of knowing one's own history, in that it doesn't get lost in knowing one's roots.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one thing, because it can be, with the turmoils of a modern world, it can be lost in time, for one of those. So by doing this, by doing the quests, it does put it on the forefront and say, well, actually, there were other members, there were many lords and ladies, that it does go back to this history, and there was land that was owned here. Especially Raby Castle. Again, it's very controversial. I mentioned it in Genesis Code book. That the Raby Castle was owned by the Neville family, and it was taken back. I don't know if you know the history of it. It was taken back by the crown at the time, because 700 knights met in the eastern hall of Raby Castle at that point in time, and they plotted to overthrow the crown and take back England. As you can imagine, at that point in time, it wasn't very favourable. Now, within those 700 knights that met, there were some spies, obviously, that reported back to the Crown of England and said, well, actually, Raby Castle, they're planning to take over and kick you out, basically, get rid of you, kick you to the curb.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that resulted in the Neville family losing Raby Castle. Now, what's interesting is there was a deal made, as with any of these things, whoever you are in life, and the deal was quite clear. That the Crown said, well, okay, we can't have you in County Durham. You're too powerful there. You're too powerful over in Islington. You own houses along what is now known as Barking in East London. You've got too much interest. We want to take that away from you. And we're going to take it away from you. We're also going to behead one of the key people as well at the Tower of London, which did happen.
Sacrifice. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And in turn of that, we're going to create a new title for you in a place called Abergavenny in Wales. And we're going to call you the Barons of Abergavenny. And that's a new title. Yeah, yes. The new title was born.
Okay.
So it's all of a sudden. Now, for about 200 years, Raby Castle, I haven't written any of this down, I'm sorry, but I sort of just know it because it's such a passion of mine. But for about 200 years, Raby Castle was pretty derelict and vacant. Yeah, the Crown took all the land back, but they had no interest in doing anything with it. They just wanted to say, you're a naughty boy for trying to overthrow us. We're going to behead you, and we're going to kick your family out over to Wales. And they left it all empty. And it was only about sort of 200 210 years later that the Barnard family were given our castle, because it's your heritage too, Angelina.
Okay.
They were given our castle by the crown, so freely.
Yes.
And that hence now the Barnard family now operate our castle.
Okay.
So I wonder if there's any litigation we can do there, any legal process. Excuse me, sir, we want our castle back.
Yes. Yes.
You know, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Interesting though, isn't it? How now, in today's world, I don't know, would that really happen? It probably wouldn't.
You can always
Back in
ask.
the day, that was, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Back in
Knock on the door.
it was, yeah, excuse me,
Yes.
can we have our castle back?
Yes.
Yeah, so and I'm sure there's lots and lots of other family lines that have similar stories that they're just not aware of. They
Yes.
don't know these things really. So
And these details are important. I just also, before I move on to the next question, I also just want to acknowledge you for bringing this to video, especially with the younger generations that might not be apt to open a book. If they can see it on video, it's like it almost brings Steven Spielberg, it brings the drama to life, the overthrow, the suspense, the drama. Yes. So I just want to acknowledge that your willingness to go out on these quests to record it on video to make it available much more easily to somebody who might be sitting on a train or subway that has their cell phone and they can access a video, and now they're downloading the knowledge, the inspiration.
They can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can absolutely see it. They're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is good.
So you had mentioned the Templars, and I wanted to ask you, what are some of the positive things that you know about the Templars? Because across the pond in North America, we hear different things. And there could always be rumors. And I thought I would give you the opportunity to speak with clarity about, what you think the truth is.
Okay. Now, I haven't mentioned this to you before, but I had the great honor of spending a very large volume of time with the late Sir Ian Sinclair in Scotland.
Okay.
And we were very close friends right up until about a year before his death, really. So there's always been that interest with the Neville family and the Sinclairs, that connection, that they've almost been, metaphorically speaking, been in bed with each other. And I spent a lot of time with Sir Ian and obviously Lord Malcolm as well, Lord Malcolm Sinclair, who's an amazing character. He's amazing. And then you've got the chief of the Sinclair clan, which is Niven. Very elderly chap, wonderful man. In fact, one of the when I went to see Niven, which was many moons ago, they just finished filming the Da Vinci Code, and I said to, and it's ironically where they filmed where she was about to step off the cliff top. I wonder if it's true, and I can walk on air and water. That's actually directly outside Niven's home, where he lives, or did live. So it's quite surreal for me because I know Rosslyn Chapel like the back of my hand. Obviously, many moons I lived in Scotland for a period of time. I obviously on Sir Ian's estate, I was with him for a while, involved in preceptories there where we welcomed American, Belgian, Italian Templars for ceremony so my knowledge is probably a bit more than what I've let on, really. But regards to the Templars as a sort of generic viewpoint, contrary to popular belief, the Templars did have a set of codes and values to which they lived by. And we've always said that they were as keepers of the Grail, which has always been portrayed in history. And I, with my own personal inner knowledge and my own hidden knowledge that I can't share, I truly believe that to be true, that they are truly the keepers of the Grail. And I think if moving forward, that should always be the way. The Templars still exist today, but there are many groups that profess lineage to the Templars and to Anton LaVey, and they're not real. They're not real.
Okay.
I won't say on video, but I had an American chap that came over to the estate in Scotland, and Sir Ian was making him a knight at the time.
Okay.
In the Templarism, and he sadly, not because he's American, but just the person. Sadly, that man has made an obscene amount of money out of it, out of using the link to. And I had a few telephone calls with him, and I had to stop speaking with him because I was so infuriated. So I think there's one thing, there's, like all things in life, there's some very good Templar groups that have positive, true lineage back to the source. And there's a lot of others that are probably brushed through us by a little ceremony somewhere. And the next thing you know, they're claiming their fame to the Templar way, you see. Yeah, obviously I can't mention the chap in question.
Okay.
But yeah, he's sadly made a lot of money in America over it, which is wrong.
So some of the
But,
positive, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was that part. But with the positive part of the Templars, you live and die by the sword, which goes back to honor, goes back to respect, goes back to respecting the brotherhood, as it were. Now, the Templars often had bad coverage. We know that. And
Friday the 13th, yes.
You know, yes. I was going to be disappointed, Angelina, if you didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the Papal Bull on that very said Friday the 13th of October, when it was released across the realm, across the whole of the land, to round up every Knight Templar in the areas, and it only has to be open that time. So the Papal Bull was quite an interesting one. So yeah, I'm really interested that you knew that. Actually, that's really good. I mean, that context, I mean, it's really good that people do understand that part of it.
Well, I think that's the soundbite also that Hollywood gives out. And that's what the U.S. history books skim over, that one soundbite. Yeah, and then you kind of don't know anything else. It just drops off.
Yeah, I think the most important thing the Templars did really was we can't lose sight that whatever you think good or bad of the Templars, they did protect people travelling to the said Holy Land. They did. You know, that was one of their key roles in the whole of their society, their fraternity, for want of a better term. And let's not forget. Well, is it a good thing? I think it's a good thing because I work in accountancy these days, so I love money. But I mean, that's my field these days. I write books, and I work in accountancy and finance. So I run my own company, seeing clients and looking after their money. So they were the founders of the banking system for the world. I think we need to really focus on that and say, well, actually, hang on, it was the Templars that created all these little vaults and these banks per se. They created all that. So if it wasn't for the Templars being in that time frame, it makes you wonder where we would have been. Mm-hmm. You know, that they also connected countries and connected people, which was so interesting. You know, in very positive ways. I mean, yes, they'd slaughtered. Let's not mess around the corner.
Yes, brush that off. Yes.
Yeah, you know, but they certainly did a lot of good things on bringing countries and people together in unity. So I think perhaps they got a bit too powerful though over time. That's what the issue was there, as we all know as historians, I guess. You know, they got a bit too powerful. People go, hang on a second, let's just put the brakes on a minute. You know, so, yeah. But they did some really positive things, and I think they had some really good values.
Okay, wonderful. What do you find most fascinating about your family's history?
Well, I think I already mentioned it as well, but it's the most fascinating thing is the Neville line, obviously, is that we were the High Kings of Ireland. And I've had great pleasure in going to Tara in Ireland so many times and touched the stone where our ancestors were made High Kings. And it's just, oh, this again gives me goosebumps. It's an amazing thing. Now, as we know, we were the High Kings. Our family line goes all the way back. And that we were the High Kings of Ireland from 1724 BC right through to 755 AD. But what's also fascinating is that we spawned out of Baghdad in Iraq many years before that. And from Baghdad in Iraq, we went through to Egypt. Then somehow we ended up in what's known today as Ukraine. So a bit of a divert there, I guess. We also ended up going into the wonderful place, which I'm still waiting to film when I can, at Valencia in Spain. We were there for about 95 to 110 years. So that's quite an interesting little look at the Spanish part there. And there is some very distinct Neville shields still in Valencia in the history site. So I can't wait to get there and film. From Spain, as we know, we went on to Ireland, where we were the High Kings for those periods of times. And then we sort of travelled, geographically speaking, we were Lord of the Isles for a while, taking in. Now, one of our family members married the Princess of Iceland.
Okay.
which is where which in my DNA strand that I had tested, I've got 6% Icelandic strand in me. So, and I knew exactly where that had come from. That was from Princess Groa Thorstein of Iceland, because the Lord of the Isles at the time married the Princess of Iceland. So that little bit of DNA has travelled all these time down to little old me. So it was quite fascinating. Went into Scotland, and then after this, we travelled through Scotland, Dunbar. We've gone into Null. We've gone into the Atholl, and then we've come down to County Durham, where we sort of seemed to go bang. Okay, this is us. Now, whether we got tired of travelling around, I don't know. but we over the centuries, we ended up doing that sort of spiral around and then coming down on ourselves, and then bang. And then, as I said, then we were booted out. We were evicted and kicked over to Abergavenny.
Okay.
So I think there's some fascinating things there. The most interesting mistake would be, and it's interesting. I mean, it's hard to tell what the circumstance was, but we talked about the people trying to overthrow the crown from Raby Castle. So my 15th great grandfather, Sir Edward Neville. Now, he was born in 1471, so he was after the event, but he was still quite treacherous to the crown. I think there was a bit of a bitter taste in one's mouth. And he was born in 1471 in Abergavenny in Wales. Now, he was beheaded in the Tower of London on the 8th of December, 1538. So if ever there was a mistake that a Neville made, I would suggest that's probably the most strongest one, having a head chopped off by the crown.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was quite an interesting mistake, I guess. Now, of course, we can go further from there.
Would you say that would you say that was he went too far in his beliefs, or would you say the mistake was not reading the tea leaves in the landscape?
Yeah, it's probably, I think, yeah, he in many respects, I believe he was right what he was doing, but yeah, I think he just didn't work out right, did he? He didn't do his research.
Okay,
and
sure.
And yeah, and ended up. So and then of course, then we've got the interesting point, which is even more interesting. And I think you might find this personally interesting, but now Earl Henry Neville, the second Earl of Abergavenny, he was born in 1760 in St George, Hanover, London. Now, he died on the 27th of March 1843 at Erridge Castle in Sussex. Now, it's the very same castle that he decided to take over when it was in derelict state, to then make that his home, his final home. And Erridge Castle is an amazing castle. It's so much so that what's interesting is Queen Elizabeth I stayed at Erridge Castle for 6 days, in August 1573. So it was that glamorous what had been done at that point that the Queen Elizabeth I stayed there for six days. Wow, and that's a fascinating thing to know, isn't it? But I don't think you can see it on there. I'll have to email you a picture of him, but I can actually see the resemblance in me to him on the line. So I don't think you can see that. Can you see him?
Ah, yes, I can see. So it sounds like the positive decisions were stewarding the family line, stewarding the resources, stewarding the relationships, and then the mistake was not reading the landscape in that one moment, which was quite a sting to the family.
Very much so, yes.
Yeah,
but probably
people don't forget. Yes.
Probably only for a few seconds whilst he's
yeah.
yeah. Oh my God! Like, can you imagine it? Ghastly.
Well, I'm sure anyone standing around would also feel that the effects in their heart. Like, gosh, if I don't read the landscape correctly, if
I step out of line, this is what could happen.
Right.
Yeah. God, yeah. So yeah, but it's a fascinating thing, isn't it? It's the when I stumbled across that in my early days of research, I was very, very surprised and very interested. Oh my God, he's been beheaded at the Tower of London. My God, I've been there as a tourist.
Yes,
as we all,
yes.
we've seen it.
Right.
And you think, if I knew then, when I was a wee bairn, a child, if I knew then what I knew now, wow, yeah, that would have been different, wouldn't it? I really wanted to go and see exactly which room he was in.
It makes it so much more personal.
It does, very much so.
Yes.
Again, it's that living history. That history is all around us, and at a blink of an eye, at a moment's breath, we can just forget all that and ignore it, and we get so bogged in with the mundane world,
And the
we
day-to-day.
we forget all its beauty and all its history. and it all it lives on. It lives
Right.
on always.
It reminds
So,
me a bit of, there's a Netflix series called Outlander. It reminds me a little
oh my
bit,
God, yes, yes,
yes, where, yes, okay,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yes,
where
yes,
Claire can go
and,
back and things come to life energetically.
yes, 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 I know exactly.
Molly brought,
Through some stone, was it? If I recall watching the earlier series, it was through stones or something, wasn't it? She travelled through through the stones, which is quite interesting actually, because there's a very just for your own personal information or anyone's information, there's a very sacred place that's not very well known. And it's actually called the Nine Maidens Stones, and it's in a place called Belstone in Devon. And it's the most surreal place you'll ever go to, the most energetic place you'll ever go to, and it's got a wonderful history with our family line as well there. And ironically, not on the same ley line, as it were. I think you want to ask me about that in a little while, but on the same ley lines, as it were, you have Temple Church, which was a Templars church in that area, Cornwall to Devon, you know, so that's sort of going across. So on the St Michael's ley line. So that's quite an interesting point as well to remember. Belstone, if ever you get a chance, Nine Maidens Stones, Nine Maidens they call them, in Belstone.
I'd be happy,
BELSTON.
I'd be happy to look it up. I'm fascinated with ley lines. I think there's some ley lines that run through Century City in Los Angeles, which is where they have these taller skyscrapers, and it's a bit of a financial district. So it's interesting that they're, yeah.
Yeah, which is good. Which is good.
I'd love to find a map one day that shows the ley lines for the entire globe, the entire world, because yeah, it's hard to find that map.
Yes, well, yeah. I mean, I probably jumped the gun a bit here, really, I guess, but they do interconnect to many out in my own. So people have different viewpoints about ley lines, don't they? They do interlink to or in my belief, the geomagnetics of the Earth. Now, the geomagnetics of the Earth, some people refer to that as pyramid energy.
Sure, I think they get an extra boost of energy. Yeah,
that's right. Yes, and I can totally believe that, because if we look at the everything is interconnected, as we know, and the geomagnetics of the Earth, our ancestors were very aware and tuned into this fact, I believe, so much so that they built many magnificent buildings and structures along these lines. Now, we've got the St Michael's ley line, in particular, that runs through England, which I just made a reference to, which was Belstone, Temple Church, going right through to the Abbey at Bury St Edmunds. Now, the hidden part of that is the little monument under the ocean, which was on Dogger Bank, which is out across past Hopton. So a lot of the research and documents stop at Hopton, which is like a holiday village on the in Norfolk, the sort of Norfolk Suffolk area, and but it actually goes beyond there and stops on what used to be the land known as Dogger Bank, which was a massive great piece of land that came off of England's east coast, that obviously is now under the ocean. So I think our ancestors knew so much about those ley lines that they made sure they put their mark, they made their legacy, they put these marks in history to say, look, this is where we are, you know, this, and we knew, and this is what we're going to leave behind as a form of acknowledgement, respect, ley lines really are. But I've travelled them, and hey, it's sold to me. I believe it.
Yes, I was going to make a joke about prime real estate.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and is there anything else that you would want someone to know about ley lines, because they're not covered in school? They're not really something that is often talked about in terms of benefits or understanding the planet as.
Yeah, so I mean, if you imagine the planet with all its crisscrosses, I mean, everyone knows about an ozone layer. Everyone knows about
The latitude, longitude, and
yes, right, yes. But there's all these geomagnetics. Now, there's certain points. Now, one of my videos, I know you watched it, and if anyone gets a chance, watch the video that's called Spooks Hill, and that's in a place called Warboys, not far from where I'm sitting now, actually. So it's in the Cambridgeshire area, and you turn your car off, and I kid you not, I've done it. Right? You're seeing is believing, and being there is absolutely believing. And I've done it, and the video shows that the car, again, goosebumps. The car pulls itself up this little hill. Now, a lot of people give you the myth and legend of ghosts and a train and people dying, and it's the ghost pushing you up a hill. But come on, let's be real. Yeah, the ghosts aren't going to be there for centuries saying, "Come on, let's pull this car up the hill just for a laugh." They're not going to do that. When we look at that area, geographically speaking, it is fully on what we call in Templarism, what we call a pyramid energy site. So it has full pyramid energy. So that's a focus. So imagine all these wonderful invisible zaps of light that are energy that go all over the planet. Yeah. And they all interconnect like a spider's web. And then, but at certain points where they crisscross over, that's where we get those, what we call the pyramid energies, such as the pyramids that were built by the Egyptians. And the Egyptians knew this.
They understood energy.
That's right. That's why they left their mark, to recognize and respect and honor that and acknowledge it. And say, yeah, actually, we know what they're basically, the Egyptians saying, hey guys, we know what we're talking about. You know, we've done this, and that's why we've done it. Yeah. And then we go there and our masses go, wow, look at that. You know,
yes.
And we forget the whole fact about why it's really there, which is the ley line energy.
Right. We look at the architecture of the outside story, but we don't know the depths,
we don't look
the layers.
At the metaphysical. Yeah, absolutely. We look at the pure physical components that we see there, and we just don't look at that. So there's so many places. I was very pleased when I was, funny enough, because of the COVID, we couldn't go too far. So we went and did another little film recently down in Devon. We went back to Belstone, and I had the pleasure of bumping into a chap in his 90s, actually, and on this little hill, and he had all his photography equipment out with his tripod and things. I said to him, I've got to stop and talk to him. He just fascinated me. I said, oh, hi. And he sort of looked at me and said, what are you talking to me for? And I said, I'm so sorry. I've got to ask you. I said, what are you doing? I'm fascinated. He had all his books and things. He said, do you know what I'm doing? He said, I've wanted to do this all my life. He said, I had to wait to retirement, and I've been doing it now for 20 years. He said, I've been walking personally and cataloguing and photographing every single ley line.
That's wonderful.
He's been doing that for 20 years, which is amazing, since he retired. So, and he's in his 90s and he's still doing it. And I said, well, it's probably what's keeping you alive, all that exercise and, you know, all that.
Wake up. Yes.
A reason.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Focus.
Yeah.
And I think this sort of diverting back to the quests, that's definitely what they're for, really, is that it gives us a focus. You know, I'm not one to go off to the Bahamas and sit on a beach, drink all day, and then sleep on the beach to get a suntan. That's really not me. The focus of going on these trips as well is like you're going there for a reason,
a higher purpose.
That's right. And
yes.
You're going to all these places and you just think, wow, you really just think, wow, you know, and how privileged you are that you could do it, you know, on many levels, because there's many people that couldn't do it for whatever reason. But that doesn't mean that they should not think to do it. Everyone should have some kind of planning on what they're going to do with their life. And I think if that's a bucket list sounds a bit drab, doesn't it, these days? All right, my bucket list to do this. I think there must be a better term we can use, but you know, oh, it's on my bucket list of 100. I've got to go there. You think, well, I think there's a better option to use. We just turn around and say, well, actually, you know, my life's goal is a nicer term, isn't it? My life's goal is to go and visit, say, Iceland or something. So if someone wanted to go to Iceland, it might take them 20 years to get that planned and go there. But provided they go there, they've achieved that goal. And I think that's so important. It really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely better than just, I mean, it's good to have the relaxation and the leisure. There is a time and a season for that. But I think absolutely that greater purpose gives someone, that excitement to wake up in the morning of something to look forward to. And also it's that, it's I would call it the spiritual growth and contribution pieces to their life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good. And from there, I mean, the path that I've chosen, I guess, is really why do we do? We talked about this earlier on, didn't we, about psychology? What makes us do what we do? And I think, well, the pathway. It's hard to label what my pathway really is. It's hard to put a label on that, really. I think the only term that most of us refer to that follow the same sort of things that I do is we merely call it craft. It's a craft, a skill, really, I guess, a craft, which can mean so many different things. And of course, that can conjure up a multitude of avenues, really. And yet we stay focused on our mission and our focus on our reason for being, and most definitely live by the sword by ourselves. And I think that's the only reason we do, you know, what pathway do we follow? We just say, well, it's craft, really, you know. And we do look from an esoteric, from a Gnostic value. And I think that's really important that we, in all the teachings, and I've been in some of the societies that I have been part of, for want of a better term. I have done lots of teachings in those inner circles, for want of a better term, and the teachings that I pass on to new initiates over those years was, you know, that just embrace everything, reject everything except nothing. Yeah, decide it for yourself as you go, and that's the most important thing. And I think you've got to look at all religions, all cultures, all things to get this Gnostic approach, to look at gnosis as a whole and say, actually, do you know what? They've all got their, hopefully I'm not talking too much, Angelina.
But no, this is great. This is great. Yeah, I think go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've all got their elements of truth. I think that's the most important thing there. Everything that even the things I write, Genesis Code, little plug for the book there, give you a little pamphlet, Genesis Code.
Good.
Yeah, good little plug there. But of all the, don't forget Finding Camelot. Good, okay, coming out soon.
Okay.
They're still near you.
Okay.
yeah, but I think of all the things that we do, we've got to look at and say, well, no one woke up this morning and said, do you know what? I'm going to create a religion. I'm going to look at this cup and I'm going to say, we're all going to worship this cup. And this is now the cup that God has, and this is our God, and we're going to pray to the cup. Yeah. No one woke up and created a religion. As we spoke about earlier on, everyone on the entire planet had something passed down to them along the years, the stages, that has allowed them to create what is labeled religion. But they've all got an element of truth, because they didn't just make it up. They didn't just wake up and say, we're going to have this thing. It all goes back to a source. Now, I had a wonderful conversation once with a rabbi. I'm not Jewish, but I had a wonderful conversation. And I said, well, I asked this rabbi, and I said to him, well, how do you know which is the right pathway for God, Rabbi? He said, my child, he goes, he got a little stone, he put it on the floor there, and he lined all these little lines away from the stone, you know, just like metaphorically speaking. He said, there are many pathways to God, which is true, isn't it? Because, you know, I think we've had too many wars, too many things over religion, but we're not really fighting. What are we really fighting for? It makes you wonder. You know,
I wanted to add that I think that speaking about a greater path that you're choosing with your own life, I think it's almost to go back and to look at what is, this is my interpretation, please provide your feedback. It's to go back and to look at moments of history and places that have been forgotten, bring them back to life. And you're giving a certain level of respect to them, but also making them relevant to the reader or the viewer today in how this information or how these truths can apply to their life. And I just see the word respect. It's like you're giving it like so it doesn't just become invisible.
No, you're absolutely right, Angelina. You said that very well.
Intuition.
Yeah, no, you're very right. The most sincere time I was highly humbled, if that's a phrase, but really humbled, was when I went to a church Staindrop called Staindrop, place called Staindrop in County Durham, and that's where some of your relatives as well are encased in the church. And I felt so humbled to go into that church and see our relatives there, and see the Neville Chapel that's still there, the chapel for the private chapel for the Nevilles. And then from there I went to a place called Rolleston, 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 Rolleston. And we've got a Neville Chapel there as well.
Yeah.
And it just it humbles me. It really humbles me. I don't know.
To become a part of that, to be able, like you had said, the privilege on many levels. I also wanted to add, I think there's the element of story also. You get to invite your viewer, your reader into the story. So whether it's a direct connection to them or you're inviting them into this adventure, you know, through a book.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly powerful also, like the elements of the hero, the villain, you know, what happened? He got beheaded. It's not a boring story. Yes.
No, it's I'd say it's real. You know, it's
right.
I don't know if in America, it's been a year since I was in America, in New York, but do they still use the phrase? Do you guys still use the phrase "keep it real"?
Yeah, yeah, it was probably more 90s, but I think still.
Oh God,
yeah,
I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it. I always remember that. Keep it real, and I think that's the one thing we do, keep it real. But yes, it's 90s now, I guess. But yeah, so we try. I try and keep it real, you know, and say keep it focused, and it's lovely to share all these things with people that they just wouldn't see normally. And YouTube's such a great platform for getting messages out there and allowing people to comment and share. And I just love doing it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and I think there's also a message that what is available today is just more than commerce. It's more than just being able to buy something on Amazon. You know, you're inviting people into the depth of the origins and
That's right.
Okay.
I mean, it's pure determination of portraying the truth of history. That's what I think. I mean, there are so many lies in history now that everyone's always had, and you know, it always only benefits a few, doesn't it? A little smidge of people. And by the videos, really, it is like our own little piece of truth out there on the waves, you know, for people to access if they choose, because we don't say you must go and watch this. Yeah, people stumble across these things, don't they? Like, as we all do. And you think, oh, that's interesting, I might have a little watch of that, you know. And then someone says, well, actually, I don't agree with what he's saying, but it's fascinating what he said, you know. So you get it from both avenues, really, which is just wonderful, really wonderful.
What inspired you to create the videos? Was it just one day you woke up and you said, no one else is doing this, I'm going to give it some justice? Or
yeah, I think you probably hit the nail on the head again. It was very much a case of I wanted to get some reality checkpoints out there to people. I wanted to make sure that it was, again, I won't use a 90s phrase, but keep it real.
Yes.
But I remember that now for the next week. Now I'll be saying to everybody all over this area of Cambridgeshire, I'll be saying, keep it real. but yeah, it's just making sure that what I've always wanted to do is, we live by money. We all live by money, rightly or wrongly. And that's one reason why I keep my books at a good value price, because I don't want to charge, I don't want to charge lots of money where people can't afford to buy these things.
And have the access.
That's right, yes.
Right.
And it upsets me, I guess, because I think, well, everyone has a right to embrace
knowledge.
History, embrace. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
No one has a caveat on that, really, to be fair. So, and again, the social platforms, things like YouTube, allow anyone to access that from anywhere in the world, you know, apart from certain countries that ban our internet. But you know, in most places in the world, they can access them, and it doesn't cost them anything because they already have the internet anyway, or they can go to a free zone where Wi-Fi is free and access it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So there's all, yeah.
I think another aspect that's interesting is, you know, when we've talked about the victors tend to write history, and I think when you bring up being able to explore the lies, what if the non-victors can now bring their perspective forward, can now bring their storyline forward? How does it change?
Yes, yeah.
And I think with the internet these days, it's becoming more of a horizontal level playing field for those that have the courage to speak and write and create videos and do the research.
Absolutely. So I mean, some people say, "Oh, the internet's a curse." I said, "No, it's not. It's a blessing, absolute blessing. You know, that we can. Hey, look, we're communicating through the old technology across the pond."
Yes,
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, across the pond. But you know, we're communicating with that technology. You know, take it back to the 80s. My God, we'd be lucky we had a phone call. You know.
Yeah.
God, I mean, yes, I remember. You know, I remember those mobile telephones that weren't so mobile. They're like a briefcase, and they weighed
like a brick. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yes,
know.
yes, yes.
You
Yeah.
know how far we've come in such little time, isn't it? But yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is to keep it going, share that history, use YouTube, use your social media.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And I just want
to
to add a thought to that. I think that when I look at the progression of technology these days, I think it is a wonderful tool. And I love to see it when humanity will meet it. So it's not just that technology is a convenience, but rather that our personal development meets it and we grow personally.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. You're absolutely right. I think we need to be, again, it's all about that wonderful keyword balance again, isn't it? Getting some kind of balance between interacting with AI, as it were, artificial intelligence, and but why is it artificial? It's a very bizarre phrase, isn't it, to use a very bizarre label. But let's say to interact with another intelligence,
Yes.
um, as well as our own, in
Right.
the biological
Right.
sequence.
So yeah, I have a huge a vote for humans still being able to develop their own intelligence. Yeah.
Hmm.
In addition to matching other forms of intelligence out there, so that we just don't rest on our laurels and say, oh, well, that AI can do all of the work, or that technology can do all of the work. And then we
Yeah.
stop growing, we stop exploring, we stop questioning. Yeah.
And I think you're right there, because I mean, there's a wonderful film. I'm sure everybody across the planet has watched it. It's called Lucy, and it's all about
Oh,
the
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
amazing film
Right.
about how we know that we only use about 7% of our brain,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, it's an
we
amazing
know,
movie.
yeah, because the movie portrays about what happens if you suddenly get that increase in knowledge, in understanding, in perception, and you're suddenly using, say, 30%, 50%, 70% of your brain, which does always beg the question: why do we only use 7% of our brain? Why is that? Is it that brings up a whole nother interview, really, to talk about, well, are mediums really people that are special, that use 10% of their brain that we just don't
Mm,
realize?
yeah.
Are psychics the same? Perhaps they use 15% of their brain that we just don't realize. So it brings up all these other questions, doesn't it? About, well, why do we only use 7%? And how do we know we only use 7%? That's the other thing, isn't it? So there's all these wonderful questions that can come up from that, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to round this out, so personally, why is the knowledge of your ancestry important to you? Is it the
I think
clarity? Go ahead.
yeah, it is for identity, clarity. I think now this is a very strange thing to say. When I was a child, I used to have these dreams. It sounds really bizarre. Oh, I used to have all these dreams, but I used to have these dreams, and I dreamt of places that I'd never been before. And I kid you not, as long as I sit here alive today, some of those places I've been to and filmed, I saw them as a child in my mind.
Wow, that's like a foreshadowing. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I will share that with you, because I think that's so important, because a lot of that is what's kept me going in that direction. It's almost like I hate to use the word fate and destiny, but I think it's almost been like a destiny to follow it, because by doing the quest, it's allowed me to see those places and suddenly realize, hang on, I know this place, I know that road. And the people I've been with at the time of the quest, they said, I said, I know exactly where we are. In fact, just over there is, and there it is. And people think, oh my God, you're just weird. Yeah, but I don't think that's weird. I think it's amazing, absolutely amazing to know
It's
that.
like being guided in your life.
Yeah, which again gives all of us have some kind of hope of
Mhm.
that we all have a higher purpose. We all have something to do in this lifetime. Um,
Many artists, in fact, get downloads, whether the artist is J.K. Rowling on a train that wrote Harry Potter, or if it's Beethoven or Taylor Swift that gets downloads of melodies and harmonies. I think different people get downloads, and then they follow up.
I'm smiling because in my next book that comes out soon, called Finding Camelot, there's a whole section on angelic downloads
Okay.
in that book. Yeah, and there's a whole section on the angelic code and how There's not like a matrix sort of thing. I probably shouldn't use that term, probably for copyright, I guess, the matrix, but how certain things are presented to you for your brain to subconsciously accept and store for a later point in time. So yeah, there's a whole section on there in Finding Camelot, next book that comes out. So yeah, so I was smiling inside as well, thinking, oh my god, yeah, there's a whole chapter on that in my next book coming out. So yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. I think there's so many things that we don't know about the world we live in, and perhaps we do need to put those brakes on and take a deep breath and say, actually, do you know what? Look at this environment I'm in. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
And final question, what would you like your legacy to be?
Oh, now that's an interesting question. When I publish my works, I've done all the books and things. I certainly I like my books to live on after my life ends, this life ends, and hopefully they will. I'm sure they will. Or the YouTube videos, but I'd say perhaps about 50 years from now, people will go, who is that idiot on there? You know, and then someone might say, oh my god, he's quite interesting. So negative publicity is always good as well as positive publicity. So yeah, so I guess I'm part way there to achieving my own voice after life, really, if that makes sense, because you know, any of us that do any type of digital recording these days, we are, without us, perhaps we don't realize always, but we are leaving that digital mark.
Right, the digital footprint.
Yeah, absolutely. It's infinite. It's infinite, isn't it? It's not going to go away. Yeah, we're going to decay and go, but that's always going to be there, that little mark. You know, footprints in the sand, dare I coin a phrase. That's always going to be there. And of course, it depends on who wishes to listen. And the most important thing, I think, is and how attentive their ear truly is. You know, because we all have our own beliefs in life, that's fine, but do we accept others' beliefs? Do we ignore that? Do we poo-poo that? Do we say, well, actually, no, there's an element, it's one of the phrases I've always used in my writings, element of truth, because everyone has an element of truth, don't they? Everyone does, you know. So, and it's trying to work out those jigsaw puzzles and put the pieces together that we go, oh my God. One of my students, I'll use the phrase student, I've been teaching her for 30 years in an organization, for want of a better term. And she said to me, oh my God, Karl, she said, there's things that you taught me 29, 30 years ago that I'm now suddenly realizing the answers were there in those books back then. But I had to get to this stage of development in order to reread those books and think, oh my God, you cheeky little monkey, she said, it's been there all along. And I just looked at her and smiled and said, yes, it's always been there. But it's if only you open your eyes to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be ready. Yeah. I think that one good thing about the youth these days is I think they are curious and they're hungry and they're looking out into the landscape and they're figuring out who can give me the answers and who can be my guide.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I think we do tend to positively challenge things these days. We go, well, actually, hang on a minute, let's have a look at that. Let's pull it apart. Let's try and put it back together and hopefully make some sense of it. And I think you're right, the youth today is doing that. And long may it continue. Long may it continue.
Yeah. Well, this has been a delightful conversation. Thank you for participating and showing up with such transparency in your answers and in this dialogue. And I appreciate it very much. And if you'd like to do a third plug for your book, by all means.
Oh, yes, quick, let's do it. Quick. There we are. Genesis Code by Karl Neville is available Amazon. Amazon's a wonderful place. Get on Amazon quick, guys, and do it. Do it right now.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Neville, and I appreciate your time very much. Great job.
Bless you. Take care. Thanks, Angela.
Okay.